live. And you think it's best that we share the screen here? So for those who are tuning in right now, we are live. We are talking top 100 prospects. We are breaking down the list. Should I also go live on Twitter? I don't know. It might be too late for that. Doesn't really matter. Send more people to the YouTube. But thank you so much for joining us. We're here to answer basically all of your questions about this top 100 list and, basically subject ourselves to getting yelled at by fans of different fan bases. That's what it's all about, right? Everyone's prospects are too low. I will say we haven't really had that. So that's why we did this, right? We wanted to kind of have fill that void, but very excited to go through the top 100 with you all. Really appreciate everybody taking the time to come hang out, and very excited to see what kind of questions you got. While we're waiting for people to come in, I want to highlight one from Mr. Juan. Mr. Juan comments on a lot of our stuff, seems to watch a lot of our stuff, so I really appreciate him. He said he's going to miss the start of it, so I don't know if he wants to scroll back or whatever it may be, but I thought that this was a great question, like to start on the philosophical side of things, explaining the difference between raw power and in-game power in our rating system. So you could probably boil it down into one power grade, but I feel like this is the best way to kind of communicate where a player is at, what their potential is, and where they could eventually be. My biggest thing with the raw power versus game power is Brett Beatty is an excellent example of this. Early on, Beatty had ridiculous raw power, but was not producing a lot of power in games because of how much he was hitting the ball on the ground. The converse of that would be somebody like Anthony Volpe, who his 90th percentile exit velocity is like 101 miles an hour. That's below average raw power, but because of the way he's able to lift the baseball, because of the carry that he generates on a baseball, it is so incredible that the way he is able to really just tap into power in games. So it really is just all about that. There's guys that will hit more home runs than you expect the exit velocities to point towards, and vice versa. So it's kind of highlighting those two, but obviously there's going to be a ton of overlap with that. It's also a way of showing what kind of power these guys can tap into eventually as well. So is the list out? Yes, Tommy, the list is out over at justbaseball.com. You can follow along and then comment any questions you have. We're here to kind of answer all of the questions that you may have about the list. Again, it is over at justbaseball.com. Oh, Tommy found it. Glad you did. So, Jack, any thoughts on that before we kind of jump in? I mean, you get to see guys a lot, in game, day to day, and I think Volpe's as good of an example. Is like there's just some guys that the batting practice might not be a show, but when they get in games, they just got to feel to hit the ball in the air and leave the yard, even though the exit velocities are kind of meh.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're really lucky to have the number of guys, have the number of players, the number of, people on coaching staffs and front offices that we contact. Like, we're really lucky in that regard. And we can, talk about all these guys with them. And I think Taylor Davis, who hosts a podcast on our network, hey, shout out Taylor Davis, you guys stink. TD brought up a great point with Chris Bryant when we were doing Show and Go with Taylor Davis. And he said, listen, like Chris Bryant isn't necessarily going to pump out the crazy batting practice where he hits these 500-foot bombs, and he's not going to pepper the Jumbotron at Lone Depot Park like Ohtani and Trout were doing in the World Baseball Classic, but he will figure out a way to put it over every fence at every ballpark he plays at. And I think that's game power versus raw power, right? 100%. Like you see guys pop out, 118s like Stanton and Judge, but a guy that hits, 50 home runs and just sneaks them over every, single wall at every single ballpark. Those are the kind of guys that really play.
100%. We'll start with a guy that's not on the top 100. I will say that if this list came out in a few weeks, Andrew Abbott might be making his case. Also, Matt, thank you so much for the support, man. YouTube, that $10 contribution there is more than we'll get for a 10,000 view video. So I really appreciate that very much. Thank you for that. So to answer your question, jokes aside, Reds fans are excited about Abbott, everything he's doing, or was it just MIIS? What is MIIS?
Was he a just missed?
Oh. He
context clues next time, man.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're live right now. I'm not really like delving into context. Honestly, like very fluid with his situation because he looks like a different pitcher than we saw at the end of last year. Velocity's up 2 miles per hour. Stuff looks a little bit better. The breaking ball is sharper, but most importantly, the fastball is a tick and a half to 2 ticks up from that deceptive release point. That's a problem. He looks like a Carlos Rodon starter kit. Obviously, like he's not going to throw 100, so he won't be that good, but you can see the qualities there. He wasn't a just miss because we finalized this pretty much before the season started, and then it was give or take a few guys with slight changes through the first week of the season, and then a couple graduations. But I will say is he will be strongly considered if he continues this, and probably crack the list in the midseason update if he keeps looking like this.
Well, and the other thing on Abbott, like this guy has always been a strikeout guy. You think, hey, 4-year college guy at Virginia, he's going to be a pitchability person. No, he's not. He is a high strikeout and at times command gets away kind of guy. He was a really good reliever, and then he turned into a top flight starter at Virginia in a COVID shortened 2020. He comes back 21, and he is a full-time starter there. So Abbott, the thing is, like last year, yes, he was an innings eater through nearly 120 innings, but he punched out 159. Like he was striking out 12 guys per 9. He was walking 4 per 9. So what does he do in his first 2 starts? I mean, it's absurd. Like it's not sustainable, unfortunately. 10 2/3, 2 hits, no runs, 25 Ks, and 1 walk. Obviously, the 25 Ks is what stands out, but the 1 walk is really interesting too, because if this guy is willing to live in the zone like this and get this much swing and miss and have this overpowering of stuff, I mean, this could be a new gear and somebody that can leapfrog somebody like a Brandon Williamson in about a month or 2.
He already really has too. Like I think in terms of like on the depth chart, not yet. Also, thank you, Freckled Boz 92. This is more than we make in multiple weeks now from our YouTube revenue. So I can't thank you enough. It really does help. Especially with all the work we put in. Gosh, these people are amazing. And this is throwing me off because I'm talking to Jack M, and I thought it was Jack M trolling me in the beginning with this. But all right, let's answer a few of these questions first on the donation questions. Thank you for those. Jack M, not this Jack M.
Yeah.
What made us put Ethan Salas and not Felnine Celestin, and how close was Cole Young to making it? So, I generally don't put the young IFA guys in there. I really don't. I know that's why when I told Jack the list was finalized, that was my specific one. I was like, I can't wait for him to see that one. Ethan Salas is 16 years old. What really separated Salas for me was how insanely advanced, and I can't wait to get Taylor Davis's thoughts on this because that's the co-host on Show and Go with Taylor Davis that Jack hosts with him. Obviously professional catcher for a long time, big league catcher. The way how quiet Salas's hands were, the way he was receiving, his arms already plus. At 16 years old, his swing already looks phenomenal. He's putting up pretty good exit velocities. I was able to go catch some Winter League games on video. The way that he controls the strike zone, he's so comfortable. To me, it was just like, this is a wonderkin, and you can understand why teams were lining up for $5.8 million to try to sign him. Cole Young was a strong consideration, but just not quite as dynamic. And honestly, I was not able to get as much video and information on Celestine, so it could just be that. Like maybe if I saw more, I could have liked him more, but I really don't want to grandstand on a guy that I don't know much about. If I'm not going to know much about a guy, I at least have him stand out in every aspect of the game, which is what Salas did. And then the makeup seems to be off the charts as well.
Well, and there's availability there in terms of watching Ethan Salas, right? Like we got to look at
to watch him receive in a spring training game with a big league team.
Big league spring training at 16 years old is freaky. That's some Joe Nuxall type stuff, like 15-year-old throwing in a big league game. And, we thought that was kind of a crazy move by AJ Preller, I guess, by Bob Melvin, like having him catch in a big league game. But the fact that he didn't look so ridiculously out of place is a testament to Ethan Salas, man. I mean, even just defensively.
Yeah, you throw Cole Young or Celestin in a spring training game, I think the game, big league spring training game, I think the game looks really sped up to them. Not only was it not sped up for Salas, he's receiving well, he's blocking well, and then on top of that, catch some video on the backfields. He's squaring up fastballs from George Kirby. He's just a freak, and wonderkin's the best word I can use. From our guy Clay Snowden, Esteury Ruiz, because Clay Snowden is resident A's guy now on top of resident Reds guy because he just needed more below 500 love. Yeah. Ruiz had a great game the other night, by the way. I think 3 hits, and his one out was a loud out to left center field. His ceiling is probably not that far from his floor, right, Jack? Like, that's why he's in the back half of the top 100. The floor is pretty high. Ceiling is a little bit higher. I think his ceiling is above average regular who makes a couple all-star games. Yes, he needs to learn how to hit breaking balls. I think he'll get there. I think he'll be a little bit more of a well-rounded hitter. But I think that the tools across the board here kind of say it. 50 hit, 50 raw power, probably slightly less in game, elite runner, and slightly above average defender. That's a slightly above to above average regular. And I think that's kind of what he is. I guess the ceiling would be well above average regular, which is a 3.5 to 4 win player. I think that's probably the realistic ceiling, but dynamic in the way that he's able to steal bags, which he hasn't done yet, but I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, we talked about Esteury Ruiz on the call up a little bit, and this is a guy that, has had some availability to the masses in terms of playing big league games. And obviously what you take away from Esteury Ruiz's baseball reference page is the bags from last year, right? Like, he stole over 70 bases last year in AAA. Yeah. So you look at that and you say, okay, this guy's a freak of nature. You have 75 on the run grade. The floor is one of the best base stealers in the game if he's running wild whenever he gets on base, and he's getting on base at like a 270 clip, right? 280 clip. Billy Hamilton in his career, obviously that's an 80 runner, fastest guy that I think we've seen in quite some time. Billy Hamilton is a career 290 OBP guy, and he's got parts of 10 big league seasons under his belt.
That's a good point.
Yeah, like
Esteury is way better with the stick. Yeah.
He's way better with the stick, and also like Billy Hamilton has no meat on his bones. Esteury Ruiz is a strong dude. He looks
up to 109 the other day. Like, he's got more power than people give him credit for. Also, if Taylor Davis is his Ethan Salas, if Taylor Davis is saying a guy stands out to him receiving wise, like, guy standing out to him receiving wise. So no doubt, like that's all I needed there too. Another really good question, and this comes from Todd. Ronnie Mauricio, and thank you again so much for the donation. I really appreciate that. Ronnie Mauricio versus Oslevis Basabe. Just so you know, this is an Oslevis Basabe podcast. Both Jack and I love that guy.
Yeah.
He was actually a consideration for this top 100, but the ceiling was just too low. This comparison here is why these lists stress me the hell out. I got to compare a 35 hit tool guy to a 60 to 70 hit tool guy, but I have to compare a 35 to maybe 45 power guy to a 70 power guy. Like, it is just very, very, very different. For me, Mauricio, 22 years old, already in his second stint in AAA, which is what really stands out. And also how much better the glove has gotten. The ceiling for Mauricio is so much higher. The ceiling for Mauricio is 30-plus home runs at the highest level, albeit a low OBP, but that's the ceiling. We talked about kind of what Ozzie Albies does offensively. Like, in terms of zone contact, chase rates, and power, game power, Mauricio kind of fits into that Albies bucket, where WRC plus will never be that high, but you'll see a lot of home runs, a lot of runs driven in if it all clicks. Switch hitter, and again, staying power at short, could be a really good defender at third. Basabe was very close. He was definitely a consideration. We had him top 10 in the race system. He sprays the ball all over. I think he hits the ball a little bit harder than people would expect. He's a good defender. But ultimately, what Mauricio is doing right now as a 22-year-old, what he did in the Winter League, what he did in spring training, I'm willing to give him one more year here, because if the approach we talked about on the call-up is remotely decent, he's going to be a very productive power bat at the big league level. Any other thoughts? I know we kind of unpacked that a lot on the podcast, Jack, but anything else on that?
Yeah, I mean, Mauricio is so funny because he is the poster boy of prospect fatigue. We talked about Mauricio in that way. We talked about Matthew Liberatore in that way. I mean, he's 23 years old. He's in his third stint in AAA. And then, of course, Jason Dominguez, another guy that is the poster boy of prospect fatigue. So,
No doubt.
you know, Mauricio's just one that, like, again, is 22, and he's started so well in triple, and it's incredibly impressive what Mauricio's doing. And I think you got to give the edge to a guy that can hit 25 homers as opposed to Basabe, who's going to put the ball in play, but probably maxing out at 10.
Yeah, exactly. Great question here. And thank you, Matt, for the contribution there. Again, really appreciate it. This is a great question because we talked about this on the call-up. I think you said, and like I said, Zach Neto is going to be, you know, I think can be a big leaguer this year and help the Angels win. You took it a step further and said Zach Neto starts a wild card game for the Angels. And I love that because one, I am drinking the Kool-Aid this year with the Angels because of what O'Hoppe brings to the table, what those role players have done for them that they've added. And honestly, Zach Neto is just one of those guys that rolls out of bed and hits, right? He's got the big leg kick. He's got a lot of moving parts, which I think some teams were nervous, like coming out of Campbell, you know, a mid-major, even though that's a top 25 team this year in college baseball. Yeah. People were like, oh, well, yeah, those moving parts worked against that competition, but how's it going to work when you got 98 riding on your hands? Hasn't been a problem for Zach Neto. He hits everything. And as you can see in these grades, we've got him all the way up at 27. I think we're the high guys on Zach Neto. What I also like is the glove is solid at short, but he's athletic. You can move him around. Power should be above average. Hit tool, I think, is going to be plus. This is just a really, really good player. And from Miami, just crushed through South Florida as well. What I love about Neto is he's just kind of that ball player mold, you know, and that's something I really like. There's not a hole to poke in his game. He's another one of those like fives across the board scouting tools wise with potentially a 6 in his hit tool. It's hard to argue against that.
Yeah, and take Big South numbers with a grain of salt. Obviously, take college baseball numbers with a grain of salt for first-round picks because, you know, college baseball, like, it feels like every first-round pick has an 1,100 OPS and so on and so forth. But, you know, Neto had a 1,300 OPS at Campbell last year. Neto in 53 games, 260 plate appearances. Guy walked 40 times. He struck out 20 times. So if you're doubling up your Ks in walks and you're also hitting 23 doubles and 15 bombs in 53 games and you're 19 for 20 in the stolen base department, that screams a guy that is otherworldly talented that just happens to be smooth as all get out. And I think that's what we see with Neto. He's starting so hot in Double-A right now. That's the toughest environment in the Angels system in Rocket City. So he's going to go to Salt Lake after this. Salt Lake is a launch pad. Exhibit A, Joe Adell.
Exhibit B, Mickey Moniak hit 2 home runs last night, dude. Jordan Adams has 4 homers on the year. Like, that place is literally a launch pad.
So we'll see what Neto does, man. But I think that this guy, like, he's going to tear the cover off the ball for 2 months in double. He's going to get bumped up to triple. And then they're going to have no choice because your option's either Rengifo at short or it's Zach Neto in September when you're making a playoff push.
And I think, to your point, his numbers are going to be even better in triple. And what stood out to me, and I tweeted about this during spring training, his exit velocities through spring training were even in the small sample size, up from what we saw last year, like new max exit velocities, more 106s, 107s, 108s, even 109s. That'll translate into a lot of power over there, you know, especially in the launch pad that is Salt Lake, and then eventually to the big leagues as well. And I think this is a guy that's just going to kind of hit the ground running and just continue to be a consistent hitter. Jack, this one's for you. Still doing the Toledo meet and greet.
Am I still doing the Toledo meet and greet? That's a great question. Will I be in Toledo? I have no idea. So we shall see. If I'm in Toledo, I will absolutely do the meet and greet. The Glass City, baby. Glass producers in Toledo, Ohio. Did you know that?
No, I had no idea.
You don't need to.
Also, our guy, Greg Huss. Cubs with 6 guys that made the rankings, and that doesn't include Jordan Wicks, who's my favorite arm in the system. Just needs to run into some better batted ball luck, but the repertoire is taken off. Yeah, I'm excited to watch Wicks. That's definitely a guy that's in the consideration, too. As we talked about, like, there's 200 guys to 250 guys that are top 100 caliber, meaning that, like, if somebody put them on their top 100 list, I wouldn't be like, whoa, you're off your ass. You know, I wouldn't be like, you're crazy. And I think that Jordan Wicks is in that bucket as well as a high floor lefty that look at what we're seeing with Andrew Abbott. If Wicks can kind of be similar to that with the tick up, he has the deception, his changeup's elite. He could be a really, really good pitching prospect, and he already is a very solid one. His body's it's not the same as Abbott. I'd like to see him kind of, fill out a little bit, be a little bit more athletic, but I think that's pretty much the only thing kind of missing for him there. He's a very talented arm. Thank you again, Jack McMullen. It's Jack, you're just paying us. No, thank you, the real Jack M. This is a good question. How high can Harry Ford rise on the list pre-debut? Jack, what do you think about this? Because Peter specifically brought him up on the Just Baseball show because, of how dynamic he is as a plus running catcher who has a great approach and sneaky power. Yeah. If he doesn't catch, he could play center. And the bat looks really good. It's a Dalton Varsho starter kit. I think this guy could be a top 20 prospect in baseball before he debuts, maybe better than that. If he's hitting and walking the way we see him walk and continuing to grow into that power a little bit, and again, if he's catching and then also showing the speed, how is that not a top 15, top 20 prospect in baseball? I think he has a chance, and he's still so far off in terms of his development, and they're probably going to take their time with him because he's a catcher. He could legitimately crack maybe top 10 by the time he debuts. Do you think that's crazy?
No, I don't. Harry Ford of the Seattle Mariners and of Great Britain fame in the World Baseball Classic, wearing those red jerseys with the Times New Roman size 12 font that says Great Britain across the chest. So Ford was like the star. He was the breakout 20-year-old star of the WBC. And we saw Edouard Julien go yard a couple times. We saw Owen Casey go yard. But it was Harry Ford that caught everybody's attention in that pool in Phoenix. And understandably so, man, because you mentioned, if he doesn't play catcher, he's going to play center. And that he's everything I wanted Dylan Dingler to become quicker. And Dingler still has a chance to be a good Major League Baseball player. But Ford looks like, top 20 prospect in the game. And I think Harry Ford fits the mold of the modern catcher, quote unquote, and takes it even a step further. Like we talk about Adley Rutschman all the time. Guy's a great athlete that happens to play catcher. JT Realmuto is a great athlete that just happens to play catcher.
Andy Rodriguez,
Gabriel Moreno, all these guys. Alvarez is the only one that kind of bucks the trend right now.
And I would say Alvarez is even more athletic than you'd think too. That's exactly the thing.
So you're seeing these hyper athletic catchers. I think Ford can be the most hyper athletic catcher. He can steal 20 bags. He can hit 300. So yeah, man, I could definitely see top 10.
I love this question because I have my answer. And I actually think I mentioned this specifically on the call up.
Yeah.
And thank you again, Nathan. I appreciate the contribution there. Josu DePaula, bro. We'll pull up Josu. Josu DePaula is my favorite swing I've ever seen from a prospect below the lower levels, right? So a rookie level prospect.
Dude's watching moon landing footage of the DSL. He's watching Bruno Caballo draft footage, and he's like,
dude,
I'm in.
And I was sold on that. I mean, look at the hit. I will never do this. You know this, dude. I will never do that. I will never put a 50 present, 60 future on a DSL guy's hit tool. Never. Connor Delgado of the Yankees was the only one that was also kind of in that conversation as well.
Yeah.
His swing is so silky smooth. I'm going to tweet a video out of it because everyone deserves to see this swing. So smooth. He controls his lower half so well. 90% zone contact at the complex. That is impressive stuff as a young hitter. I watched him turn around 98, 99 without a problem. He drives the ball the other way with authority, and he's got way more room to fill out. He's advanced, and he's got some upside. I think he could be the Jackson Chorio type of, ascend or just riser through, the minor league ranks. And as we've talked about on both podcasts now, he is directly related to Stephon Marbury and Sebastian Telfair. So what else do you want from a guy?
Nothing else.
We are the first folks to rank Casey Schmidt as a top 100 prospect. And you know what? I'm damn proud of it, Katie. Damn proud of it. Thank you for noticing that. Casey Schmidt, we talked about for a while on today's episode. That episode of the call-up you can go check out. We went from prospects, 85 to 71.
Yes.
Casey Schmidt has continued to get better offensively, is tapping into more power. His bat to ball is continued to get better. And he is the best defensive third baseman in the minor leagues, and I think one of the best defensive infielders in the minor leagues. He'd be a plus defender at the big league level right now. And what's most amazing about it is his glove is so good that he filled in for Marco Luciano at shortstop for 40 games in high A last year, and then went back to third, right? He's a human highlight reel. You can go check out this thread. I promise it's worth your time. You'll really have fun going through all of the plays that I kind of pulled specifically that showcase all of Schmidt's different abilities. And I think it was Schmidt that has one of the plays. No, was it Schmidt? No, it wasn't Schmidt. It was somebody else. I think it was Royce Lewis that hosts Taylor Davis. I knew it was one of my threads that we had Taylor Davis getting hosed at first. But this is a guy that just can really swing it, that is so good defensively that we're seeing them now play him at shortstop in AAA. So now this is somebody that might profile as a shortstop and a third baseman, and I think he could be an above average to plus defensive shortstop. I also put some of his plays at shortstop in this highlight reel as well. Bats above average. He's a good defensive shortstop or third baseman. That's a really unique profile and a really special player. I really feel like if he's an above average defensive shortstop, it's hard to say that he's not a top 100 guy. And if he's an elite defensive third baseman with what he's doing, it's hard to say he's not a top 100 guy. So either way, the bat's finally carrying the weight too.
I need some advanced metric to help quantify what Casey Schmidt does defensively. Like I need WAR for minor leaguers. I need defensive runs saved or outs above average. Like I need something to quantify just how crazy Casey Schmidt is. Cause I think that guy, I mean, last year you look at what he did just offensively between high A, double, and a very brief cameo in triple. He hit 293 at an 850 OPS, but he was an excellent defender. I mean, he could have been like a 5.5 win player in the minor leagues last year. That kind of good.
No, you're spot on. Like this guy, I think he would have paced the minor leagues in DRS. Him and Pete Crow Armstrong, and defensive run saved. It's incredible. So the fact that the Giants are willing to take their elite defensive third baseman and say, "Hey, let's see it short." Like remember, you could be diluting an asset here a little bit, but they don't feel that way because they think he could play a high level of shortstop. Schmidt's been on the podcast. He talks about how meticulous his routine is before every game to get himself right. It's not a coincidence that he's such a good defender. And then he was a two-way player at San Diego State, so he's got a plus arm. He's up to 93, 94 on the mound. So this is a guy that's going to make every single play you need to see. This is a Noel V. Marte question. We had to know we were going to get one of those, right?
Had to.
Slab Sanity, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. We are well over now what we probably bring in a month from our YouTube. So thank you all so much. Seriously, it is really awesome, and I really appreciate it. Noel V. Marte was probably one of the hardest guys to rank on this entire list. I think we can both agree on that, right, Jack? I don't know totally where you specifically stand on him. This was hard for me. He has above average bat to ball skills, which is the most frustrating part, but just a brutal approach. His average exit velocity is not going to be the best because he makes so much weak contact because of how much he expands the zone and how much he wants to pull and ends up rolling over on a lot of pitches. But he's got the power to hit 30 homers, and he's got the feel to hit 280 to this guy's point here. So I don't think it's unrealistic. Like, I don't think it's impossible, but it's becoming more and more unlikely, and there's not much value with the glove, and that's why he's kind of sinking on our rankings a little bit. But he's still young, and I'm by no means even close to out on him whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, at Great American Ballpark, 35 is very wishful thinking, but it is on the edge of realistic. So, like, I don't have any problem with that. There needs to be a concrete adjustment for him to hit 280. Right now, like, I don't think he's a 280 guy, but you're watching this GIF on YouTube right here. The swing is beautiful. Like
Beautiful.
it's full blown hot. Like that's a good swing.
Oh, it's smooth. When everything's on time and he isn't expanding and isn't trying to. And the craziest part is he's pulling a pitch middle away here, which you can do. I was talking about this when we did the live breakdown with Matt Mervis, and he's like, man, I know I can pull him out of there. So if it's up and out and I'm in a hitter's count, I'm going to do it. He's in a hitter's count here. It's up and out. But it's just like he's doing this in every scenario. And a lot of times he's rolling over on it. But when everything's together, the swing's pretty, man, to your point. And he's an 85% zone contact guy. There's an above average feel to hit here if the approach can improve. And that's really the big thing. So until the approach improves, he's a 260 guy to me.
And I'll tell you, there's actually a bit more closure on Noelvi Marte for me that he's like a true third baseman now. When he was a third baseman masquerading as a shortstop, I was like, I mean, are they going to keep on doing this like in Seattle and then after the trade as well? Now that he's the third baseman of the future for the Cincinnati Reds, I can feel a lot better about Noelvi Marte, the player, honestly, because that takes away so many defensive concerns.
100%. I think you're spot on there. And that's why I wasn't going to dock him once they moved him to third. That had nothing to do with it. We already had that built in to our assessment. Bless and Breaks, thank you so much. I've seen you in the comment sections. I really always appreciate the support. And thank you so much for the kind note there. It means a lot. And we break down every prospect. You're not wrong. So I really appreciate that. DePaula is the underrated chase in Bowman 23. Yes. Bowman 23 is sick. Got Merv. We got Julian. We got a few other guys.
Yeah. Julian's my guy, so I'm going to go after Julian. And then, I mean, Josu DePaula is becoming my guy as well.
This is pretty funny from Todd. I love this.
Somebody else asked that on Twitter. They were like, hey, could you put out like a best announcers thing? And like, there's a publication called Awful Announcing that does that. And you know, it's decent. Like there's a pretty good consensus.
I feel like as a broadcaster, you feel like an asshole ranking broadcaster.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna do that, but I will.
But it's a fun idea. I do like it. Like I don't think anyone would think about it from that perspective of like you'd be a broadcaster ranking a broadcaster. But otherwise, like, you'd probably have a ball with it. Like you know what you're looking for. You know who's good at their craft. It would be cool if you ever highlighted like these are my the five broadcasters that I love to listen to the most. I think that would be pretty cool. For sure.
Yeah. And like, you know, I try and drop that on the pod as much as possible, but I'm spoiled with the Chicago guys in, you know, Jason Benetti and Len Casper with the White Sox, and then Boog Shambi and Pat Hughes with the Cubs.
Goodness
They're
gracious.
so good. The other sneaky one is the Bay Area. The Giants, I think, have the best TV and radio booths in baseball. The Giants is John Miller and Dave Fleming.
He's one of my favorites, if not my favorite. Just the voice, too. It's just soothing.
Yeah, he's goated. And then Dwayne Kuiper, I think, is awesome. Dwayne Kuiper hands out business cards that say "Stop talking." The TV announcer for the Giants, and like that's my favorite thing. Baseball on TV, just shut up for a minute.
Yeah,
so they are.
It's not about you. It's not about you.
And then Glenn Kuiper and Dallas Braden in Oakland. I know the A's stink, but like it's so much fun to listen to those guys.
Low-key the only reason why Clay watches them.
I know. I'll drop it on the pod more when I, you know, like really love listening to guys.
Yeah, I like that. You know, I don't know if other people, you know, and just casual or even general sports fans totally know what separates the good from the great, you know, and it becomes a little bit more of just like what you personally enjoy.
For sure.
Cam Collier is hitting 450. Matt Koenig, thank you again, you goat. I know the sample is small, but how aggressive do you think they can be with him? That's a great question. And I think they can be pretty damn aggressive, Jack. Luke Collier has bred this man here, this young man. He's barely a man. I think he's just turned 18, right?
Yeah.
He's bred him to play baseball. Like this in terms of mentally, in terms of physically, the feel to hit is there. The approach. This is something I talked about with Pete Flaherty, you know, of Baseball America, who also was the Katuitt Kettleers general manager in the Cape Cod League when they brought Cam Collier on the team, and he's one of the youngest players in the Cape Cod League in a very long time. And he said the swing decisions are elite. The way he's able to spit on tough pitches and just leverage his hitters' counts, he's ahead of his years. And I think they can be aggressive with him. I don't know why. There's no reason that Cam Collier can't finish the year in high A. What do you think of that, Jack? I got no issue. Age is just a number when you're as advanced as Cam Collier is. And it's not like he's playing shortstop or catcher. Like he's a third baseman. He's a fine third baseman. And I don't think the game will be much faster for him at third in high A or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, 4 games, like he's 4 for 9 so far with 4 walks, which is great. But yeah, listen, man, 444 is 444. Yeah, like I think Collier is good enough to finish the year in high A, and it's not even like a brief cameo. I think half and half. Like he spends 3 months in low A and then hops to high A for 2.5, 3 months as well. And I think that that could be massive for him. We could be looking at a debut at age 20 for Cam Collier. That's how advanced he is. And, we saw Lou at the World Baseball Classic in Miami. Yeah. Lou was on that USA coaching staff. It's no like, oh, yeah, he's, random former big leaguer and still dabbles in coaching. No, like he's around the best players on the planet. And he's probably relaying so much of this knowledge to his kid at all times. So you have a feeling that this pedigree continues to drive forward.
100%. Jared Triolo, probably one of the more underrated prospects in baseball, right? I mean, he's pretty nasty. You have a Triolo comp, Jack?
I don't have a Triolo comp because, like, while I did see him on the Cape and I've like kept tabs and watched, as he's climbed, he's on the IL right now. I think he had a hamate. He had surgery to remove a hamate bone, I want to say.
That's not good.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to guys that have had like one or both hamates removed. So that's like kind of the new thing for hard swingers. So I'm not too worried about Triolo. But I was just texting Taylor off to the side because I saw that Triolo thing. And he was saying Triolo in like regards to Casey Schmidt. You said best defensive third baseman in minor league baseball. And he said, what about Triolo? Like that's the word around Pirates camp. And he is coaching in the Pirates organization right now. So listen, world-class defender, apparently. And, a good enough power bat that can swipe some bags as well. That's a guy that certainly could be knocking on the door of the top 100.
100%. If he swings it pretty well, I mean, he seems like a savvy player, good base stealer.
Hey, Taylor backing me up in the comments. You see that? Hamate, no big deal from Taylor Davis.
It takes time to come back. It's a pain in the ass. Look at Robert Hassel last year. I feel like a lot of guys, it takes a while to get that feel back. I don't know. I mean, I trust Taylor. He knows way more than me. I mean, he's lived it, man. I'm not going to argue with him about that, but I don't know. Maybe the people that I've talked to that have had hamate bones are dramatic. I don't know. I feel like I've heard so many different times that it takes a little while to get it right. Taylor, am I wrong with that? 6 weeks.
6 weeks,
dude. I've heard such different. Okay, we're gonna talk about that later, Taylor. We're gonna talk about that later because I want to hear more from you on that. And again, go check out Show and Go with Taylor Davis and Jack McMullen. It's an awesome podcast. Obviously, the perspective that Taylor provides is basically unmatched as a professional and big league catcher. It's hard to find that. I should stream some COD every once in a while. I am not opposed to it, Matt. We'll talk about that. Like in the dog days of the season, I might do that, but it has to be Modern Warfare 2 or the newest one. The newest one I've enjoyed playing a little bit. All right. We got a good question here. And I love this because I was just out there. Future of the Nationals outfield. This is fun because I was just on the backfields in Palm Beach, got to see these guys for a couple days. Nationals have a lot of talent, man. They do. I don't know how they're going to develop it, but they got a lot of talent. What do I foresee with the future of the Nationals? Outfield, Wood, Hassel, Green, Vaquero. TJ White, I think they moved to first, worth noting. Jeremy De La Rosa, crazy power, but one of the worst approaches, I think, in the system, but could be interesting. What was very clear to me was how far Vaquero is off, which is funny because people are shelling out cash for his cards. Wood is obviously very far off. So is Green. So I think that's kind of a cross that bridge when you get there kind of thing. Hassel could be there by the end of next year, coming off of a hamate issue that did hamper his power last year, according to people within the Nationals org on that one. So that's a guy that I'm looking to bounce back this year.
So probably best case scenario, though, is Wood, Hassel, Green, right? For the foreseeable future, if everybody pans out, you're probably looking at, I don't know, like Hassel in center, Wood in right, Green in left.
That would probably be the ideal scenario, or Green in center. Green is pretty special out there.
Yeah,
that's the interesting thing. So if you have Hassel, if that's your outfield, that could be one of the best defensive outfields in baseball as these guys mature.
Yeah, and Victor Robles still has tons of time, so don't totally factor.
He's going off this year.
He's going off this year. Buy stock now.
So yeah, I think we're a long ways away. Hassel will get there before everybody else, have the chance to kind of prove himself in center. And then if Green is doing what Elijah Green could do in the best case scenario, then Hassel's moving over. I'm sorry. That's going to be how it is. Love your guys' work. Wondering what Aram's opinion on the trio of the D-backs young pitchers of Nelson, Jameson, and Fott. I know you can add to this too, Jack. So thank you so much, Andrew. Really appreciate the contribution there. And thank you for the kind words, more importantly. This is a fun group. And we broke down the Diamondback system. Sorry, sorry, that was a good one, Nick. All right, so we broke down the system recently, and that's probably where I tipped my hand on the half job. But
are we sure it's a half?
It's more than a half, probably. I love Nelson, and I love his fastball. And I think when you have a fastball like that, we have referenced Joe Ryan all the time. I see a lot of Joe Ryan and Nelson. I don't know if his command is quite as good, but I think there's a lot of Joe Ryan and Ryan Nelson. Brandon Pfaadt is as safe as it gets to do what he did in the PCL to lead the minor leagues in strikeouts last year. His pitch mix is great. He's got 4 above average pitches, multiple plus pitches, and the command is good. It's really that simple. To me, he's as safe as they come. Jameson, I think, is thriving in his role. He's earned the opportunity to start, but I don't know if that stuff and the lack of command is going to really help him be a starter that can go more than 5 innings. I really like him in the swingman role. I don't know has your mind changed at all from what we've seen from him in the big leagues, which was honestly succeeding in the swingman role. Like, the fastball gets hit pretty hard. He's reliant on his one good, like, above average to plus pitch is the slider. And that's about it. Everything else is spotty command wise. Do you think that, would you prefer him in a 4 or 5 role, or as a swingman?
The latter. I think if I were to stack those 3 and, like, listen, I think everybody that listens to the Call Up and the Just Baseball show knows that we are aboard the Arizona Diamondbacks hype train, right? Because we think that the bats are special that are coming up. Moreno, special. Carroll, special. Carroll was the top prospect in the game before he graduated. And you've got so many other guys, and holy hell, Geraldo Perdomo is swinging it right now too. But the arms are better than people expect. And Pfaadt is somebody that was a rocket ship last year because people were finding out how advanced and how seasoned he was. This year, it's been a tale of 2 starts, man. 3 2/3, 5 earned his first start, and then 4 2/3, 1 earned his second start. And he has been pounding the zone, 12 Ks, just 2 walks in his first 2 starts in a very tough environment. So I love Pfaadt. Ryan Nelson, I love as well. I like that Joe Ryan light comp. He also has a pretty unorthodox delivery and arm slot and arm action, which I really appreciate. He's a long guy, uses that to his advantage. I think Dre is probably best as a swingman because he's a super athlete with a great slider. The question is, how long can that last?
Yeah. You figure third time through the lineup, fastball got pummeled last year.
I think he can be an elite one time through the order guy. Mm-hmm. But when you get to the second or third time, maybe you start to taper off. And here's the thing, man, like, those guys have a lot of value. I think Dre Jameson is going to be a really valuable swingman and, can be best swingman in baseball type thing. 100%. Like what you saw from Kopech in 2021.
And if he has a spot start, then sure, that's fine. That's a great spot start option. He could give you 4 or 5 strong. So I agree with you 100% there. there was one question I just saw that oh yeah, here we go. Matt Golding again, you legend.
King.
Connor Phillips, could he potentially make the top 100? Absolutely. This dude is electric. It's about command for him. And to be honest, the command still looks a little spotty, but he's just downright overpowered, guys. I tweeted about his stat line the other night. He was up to 99. Stuff is just jumping. Elite fastball, elite slider. I want to see that curve, that third pitch kind of come along a little bit more. He's kind of cut from that Dre Jameson cloth a little bit, but the good news is he's not even 22 yet. So if he keeps on this trend and the stuff looks like it is, I think he could be you could be a problem, and he could be a top 100 guy.
He's a freaky athlete, dude.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of similarities with Jameson. Blake Walston is the youngest player in AAA and never gets mentioned in these D-backs discussions. I think it's a great point. We should mention Walston. Stuff is a bit subdued compared to some of the others, but he's gotten outs. He's always pitched above his age level. He's always been competitive. And I think if he ticks up, because Walston is somebody that I think they're hoping will still tick up. He's 6'5", he's 21. The command has been a little bit spotty in the early part of this season. He's landing strikes at just a 58% rate, but he has the potential to have a good mix. And, I think it could be similar to a Braxton Garrett with a little bit more upside, because I think the stuff could be a bit better and be a solid back end of the rotation starter. I do agree he should get more conversation. I just think the limited ceiling typically, makes him get overlooked a little bit.
Here's the thing about Walston too. He looks great at and this is like a pattern that he settled into in the previous 2 seasons. He looks great at the initial assignment that he goes up and goes through these, like growth pains, like this problem, these issues. 2021, 20 years old, in low A, 8 starts, had a 3.3 ERA, gets the bump to high A, 11 starts, that jumps over 4. 2022, 4 starts in high A, he's quote unquote repeating. He has a 2.5. He goes up, spends pretty much the entire year in Amarillo. Again, really tough place to pitch, but an ERA over 5. So, that's always tough.
Yeah, it is. But again, I think there's a reason why they've been aggressive with him. I think they think highly of the way this guy can pitch, and if that tick up, I need those 91s to be 93s, 94s, and now we're talking about a different player. Good question on the Caros. Which Caros ranked higher when you do this list next spring? So I'm fully ready for Edgar Caro to kind of struggle a little bit. I actually was speaking to someone within the Angels organization and said nothing but phenomenal things about Edgar Caro, but he received a very, very aggressive assignment. So I'm going to take his AA numbers with a grain of salt. This is somebody that's extremely young. Do we have the age in front? Is he just turned 20?
He's 20.
Just turned 20. And jumps over high A, right? But he can really, really swing it from both sides of the plate. From what I was told, the Angels front office obviously really likes Caro and loves the AA staff and wanted to have him working. And we're seeing that more and more. Wanted to see him working with the specific AA staff. So he's going to be challenged to a different level, but he's going to be working with the guys that are going to help him in his development. So I'm going to take the numbers this year with a bit of a grain of salt. And even if he struggles, I'm not going to dock him much, because the field to hit from both sides is potentially plus. The power is above average, and he's got a chance to grow into being a decent defender. And the makeup is apparently super, super high end. So very, very, very solid player there. I'm a big fan of Caros. I think he's going to be good for a while.
Yeah, you got me drunk on the Jefferson Caro Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you queue up the minor league leaderboards, you see Edgar Caro, pop up everywhere. He hit 310. He had like a 970 OPS a year ago. So, that's a guy that was dominating in low A. And hey, shout out Cienfuegos, Cuba, home of not only Jose Abreu, but also Yohan Moncada. So there's some pedigree there. And
to your point, though, Jefferson is a more complete catcher. Not that much older. And it's not impossible that he leapfrogs him. I just think that Edgar is so offensively gifted as a switch hitter that they'll be very hard to rank against each other, because you're going to take the well-rounded catcher versus the very good hitting catcher who's got a shot to be a good defender, both in aggressive assignments. If one of them stands out in AA, like let's say Jefferson Caro, I know he's a slow start, as you mentioned, but let's say he puts together a 120 WRC plus in AA this year while doing what he does defensively, he could force his way up there. So I wouldn't say it's impossible. Edgar Carroll's got a pretty nice head start, though. But I think that's a great question.
For sure.
I'll leave this one to you, Jack. What do you think the Rays should do with all their infielders?
I would say trade him, but what do you need back? Like, you don't need anything. You don't need starting pitching. You don't need outfielders. If you can go get a great catcher, like I thought maybe the Rays could be in play for Sean Murphy last year. They didn't do that. I don't know. Just see which ones are really good. You obviously don't need anybody up the middle with Wander and Brandon Lau right now. Third seems pretty, congested with Isaac Paredes, and then you got Curtis Mead as well, and then Basabe looks awesome. I don't know what you can get back for a guy like Vidal Brujan. And somebody like Caminero is so far away. I don't think you have to worry about that yet. Even a guy like Ronnie Simon, like so far away. I don't think you have to worry about that yet. So I think they're going to run.
They usually wait till the 40-man crunch, I feel like.
Like they run into a roster crunch every year. So I don't think we're going to get an answer to this until we run into the 40-man crunch this winter.
To your point, I think what they'll do is kind of similar to what we saw with the Nelly Cruz trade. Joe Ryan ended up being a lot better than I think a lot of people thought. We highlighted that as that would end up being one of the few Rays potential misses there, but they had to trim somebody. And if it wasn't him, it was going to be somebody else. That's good too. I think we could see them trade from the group that you mentioned of like a Vidal Brujan who's already on the 40-man. A couple of these guys, even if it's selling low, those could be the guys they package together for a reliever or a rental or whatever. That's usually how the Rays operate with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Logan O'Hoppe question. Matt with another good one. Thank you again. O'Hoppe's ceiling. He's a guy that's floor is not too far from the ceiling. We would have had O'Hoppe exactly where we have him. Going into the year, like he's not someone that moved at all really because of the start, maybe a couple spots. We have him at, I know we got him way up there. Was it 22? 20. So I think we had him originally at like 23, 24. We bump him up to 20 because of the hot start at the big league level and how comfortable he's looked in the power. He is a walk machine historically. I think he will walk more. He's been a little aggressive in the early going, but I think it's because he just wants to hit the ball. He has a really good feel to hit. I think that's one of the most underrated parts of his game. Last year, his bat to ball skills helped him to, I believe it was something around like an 86, 87% zone contact rate. It was 87%. And now we're seeing more impact. The exit velocities are up. So he's been a little bit more aggressive, but it's resulting in more power. His exit velocities are way up. He's already put up a 112, 113. He didn't do that at all last year. So with more power now, I'd say the ceiling is a little bit higher. What would you say? It's multi all-star catcher, like, 2-3-time all-star catcher. It's with solid defense. I think his ceiling is top 5 catcher in the game, top 6 catcher in the game.
Yeah, I mean, we sit here and talk about, top 10s by position all preseason. Like during spring training, we break it down. And, over the last half decade, even maybe close to a full decade, catcher has been one of the more thin positions in all of baseball. Like we've got guys that wouldn't be top 10 in any other positional group that are, 7 or 8 on the catcher list. It's thickening up a little bit because of guys like O'Hoppe that are breaking out. And O'Hoppe was a true breakout in every sense of the word a year ago. He was, middle round pick out of high school on Long Island. And all of a sudden he busts out and he can become that 1-for-1 deal for Brandon Marsh. So yeah, I think O'Hoppe's ceiling is top 10 catcher in the game. Maybe even, top 5, top 6 catcher in baseball. O'Hoppe is never going to K enough to have to deal with that as like an egregious percent.
No,
he's good enough of an athlete. He's good enough of a bat to ball talent. I think it's great.
To your point, 21% chase rate last year, 87% zone contact. That's a guy that is not going to strike out much. And I think he's going to continue to get more comfortable at the big league level when it comes to, expanding the zone and just the quality of stuff that he's seeing. And again, the power's ticked up. So I'm all the way in on that. Jack, I'll kick this one to you too. Because you've seen some of these guys a little bit more. And I know there's one guy with the Twins that you really like. This comes from Andrew. Andrew, thank you so much. How do you envision the Twins rotation playing out with guys becoming free agents and guys coming up? Any pitching prospects that stick out to you? I know there's one that sticks out to you. And it's one that, talking to even some hitters in the AAA level that have faced some of these different arms, said that this guy, who I know you're going to say, is one of the more uncomfortable at-bats that they had.
Yeah, it's Bailey Ober. No, it's not Bailey Ober. Somebody asked, I think a little bit earlier in the comments, how I felt about watching the magic of Bailey Ober, who
he's good. I'm sorry, he's good.
I was using him as the measuring stick to Casey Mize, and I apologize to Bailey Ober for doing that, and he was great. Simeon Woods Richardson is my guy in this organization. I think Simeon Woods Richardson is a very strong candidate to break into this rotation. And there's no space in this rotation. Bailey Ober is one of the 5 in a starting rotation on more than half of the teams in Major League Baseball. The thing about Minnesota right now is you've got a whole bunch of 2s and 3s in Pablo Lopez, Sonny Gray, Joe Ryan, Tyler Mahle, Kenta Maeda. Louis Varland just went up to fill in for Mahle in New York tonight.
Yeah, I'm going. That's why we'll have to cut the stream off in about 8 minutes because I'm going to that game.
I love that. And Varland, his stuff is ticked up, and he was racking up punch outs on a frigid day
9 days
last week. Yeah, I mean, Varland's a guy that can absolutely, factor in, and he's from St. Paul, he's a hometown kid. But Simeon Woods Richardson is my guy there. He's 90 to 92. He's not that mid-90s fastball that he was billed at when he was traded in that Barrios deal. But he is 90 to 92. He knows where it's going at all times. It lives up, and then he works a changeup off that is flat out disgusting. Has a good curveball off that too. I'm going to watch Priester and Simeon Woods Richardson tomorrow night. Ooh. I'm really excited about it.
So expect that report. I'll be asking Jack about that next week because Woods Richardson's a guy that, another one that's in that top 150, top 175 range where if someone threw him in their top 100, I wouldn't blink. He's 22. Yeah, I think that's worth noting as well. I'm fascinated, and I want to hear more about this when you see him, is the fastball last year averaged 91.5 miles per hour. Yet, he had an in-zone whiff rate of 24%. That is extremely high for a fastball and extremely, extremely high for a fastball in the low 90s. So this is telling you that he's got good shape to it. You mentioned the changeup being his best pitch or one of his best out pitches. That only helps the fastball play up and vice versa. So this guy just has an arsenal that works off of itself so well. And I'm very excited for you to kind of come back with your report because I haven't seen him in person yet. So that's somebody I'm very excited for you to bring the report back.
For sure.
Question comes on our number 1 guy. So might as well. We finally get a question about the number 1 prospect in baseball for us at Just Baseball. And it is, does Ellie De La Cruz ceiling increase if he just simply concentrates on hitting left-handed solely? I definitely like the left-handed swing a lot better. But here's my thing, and I'll pull up the splits. There's so many really good hitters out there that stink left on left, right? Yeah. Stink. Edouard Julien, not very good left on left. Another former Twin, Luis Arias, one of the best bat-to-ball guys in Major League Baseball. Not good left on left. He's off today against Madison Bumgarner. A little bit of a thumb in there, but I think that was also part of it. I feel as though if it's the other way around, like Ozzie Albies, then we'll have a conversation. Because you're going to take 2/3 of your at-bats from the left side. Yes, the left side is way better, or at least a full notch better. From the left side last year, 83% zone contact, if we're talking about bat-to-ball, and a 109 mile per hour, 90th percentile exit velocity. From the right side, 75% zone contact and a 103 mile per hour, 90th percentile exit velocity. So he is teetering on that edge, but he had a 725, 730 OPS from the right side. Is he going to be better or worse than that left on left? That's the question. You got a lot of guys in the minors that are sub 700 OPS left on left.
Yeah.
The thing is Ellie De La Cruz from the left side last year had an OPS over 1,000. So I do think it's a fair question, but I don't know how good he would be left on left. So I can't really answer that. Do you have any additional thoughts? The right-handed side would have to be a disaster, I think. And I don't think it's a disaster. It might be though, at the big league level. Maybe it will be, but it's not a disaster yet.
No, I mean, thank God the left-handed swing is better.
He's not the number 1 prospect in baseball if it's the other way around. I can tell you.
Exactly. He's going to be on the left side 67% of the time.
Yeah. So, but I will say, like, what's your tipping point? And so what you're like, all right, maybe just hit lefty.
I don't know. I guess it's like when we get to this point that we've gotten to with Ozzy Albies, right?
Yeah.
Ozzy Albies is 5 years into his major league career, and we're like, dude, you got to scrap it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm begging him because we have right on right examples of him where he hits new. Like, I think has a 1,000 OPS and like 10 at bats right on right. So I'm begging that guy to hit right on right. We're going to wind it down here for one more minute, right as we hit the 1 hour mark. If there's one or two more questions that are going to come in, feel free to fire away. But I'm about to go watch Louis Varland do his thing in New York. Thank you so much for everybody hanging out with us. What were you going to say, Jack?
No, against Nestor.
I know. I'm very pumped to see Nestor.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for everybody hanging out with us. Thank you for the awesome questions. And thank you so much for the contributions. Because that is, again, we just did 2 months worth of YouTube, revenue on this live stream. And that's thanks to you guys. I really, really, really appreciate you. Actually, this is the best question I wanted to ask. How much of a dilemma was there Neto versus Win 27-28? A lot of dilemma. Ultimately, it just came down to me trusting the bat translating more for Neto. Immediately, geez.
Really late.
But ultimately, I think there's more power for Neto too. I think people would be surprised. The impact is not totally there for Mason Wynn. Love the arm, love the tools, but the bat is still a little bit further off. Neto, I just love the offensive profile a bit more, but that's one that you could really interchange. It got to the point where I was like, you know what? It's so close. Who cares? But I ultimately went with the guy that's closer to the big leagues. I have to answer this one because Matt Golding is a dog and doesn't want me to go to the Yankee games, but I really appreciate this. All right. What are the odds Hunter Green develops his changeup more? Again, I'll kick this to you, Jack, because it's like, do you want Christian Javier learning a changeup? Like, do you want him still continuing to try to learn it? I think that it just needs to be good enough for him to mix it in 8 times, 10 times a game. And right now he can't because he doesn't have the feel for it. I think there's a chance. It just takes one guy, one pitching coach saying, try this grip, try that grip. It's a trial and error pitch. I think it's very possible. But I agree. It's super frustrating when he's only fastball slider because the fastball shape is not as elite as a Christian Javier fastball, as some of the other fastballs we talked about. So he could really use a changeup. It'll help the fastball play up.
Yeah, I mean, Javier has a better fastball, as weird as it sounds, because Green is like sitting 100, but Javier is sitting 95 with way better vertical break. Like it plays a lot better. It gets way more swings and misses. And, it would be very beneficial if Hunter Green wasn't a 2-pitch guy. We see guys survive as 2-pitch guys, especially now if the pitches are so good. But yeah, man, I mean, Hunter Green, if he developed a changeup, he can start holding a candle to Lodolo because right now Lodolo is running away with the ace ship of that rotation.
I'd say it's a coin flip, really, whether he finds it or not. He's super talented, super athletic, and he's super important. So they're going to try everything with him. But some guys with that kind of arm speed and that kind of just brute strength, they never find it's a feel pitch. They never quite find the feel for it, but maybe he will. And I'm sure he'll be able to try a lot of different grips throughout the off season and try to find it there. But thank you again all so much. I really appreciate the contributions, hanging out with us, the awesome questions. You all are great. We'll try to do more live streams more often if there's content that we have coming out or just a lot of pent up questions and things like that. Obviously, we'll do it when we have our midseason update as well. And Jack and I had a blast doing a live stream for the draft. We'll probably do something like that as well. But if you guys ever have any ideas, feel free to let us know what kind of live streams you want. We're happy to do them. They're a lot of fun for us. Jack, any final thoughts?
No, man, you aced this list again, and you would text me these names late night, and I would offer you absolutely zero decisive remarks. So, this is entirely you, and thanks for taking me along for the ride.
It is not. You're my stream of consciousness, buddy, and you.
Yeah, but I don't offer anything in return.
Yes, you do. You've seen plenty, but I appreciate that. We will continue to go through our top 100 list, episode by episode over at the Call Up on our YouTube channel here and wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Jack, again for hanging out with me even longer. And we'll talk to y'all very soon.